Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. I'll go ahead and get started since you were all here on time. The workshop is on reducing test-taking anxiety, but we're going to go over like a lot of different ways to do that. My name is Alex Turnbow, and I'm a graduate assistant in the Student Academic Resource Center, the SARC office, and I oversee the Access program as well as the ACE program there. But then I also do workshops here. I work with Study Union and streaming those live sessions. So I kind of do a lot of different things at SARC. In the mental health counseling program here at UCF as a graduate student. So doing this workshop on anxiety, I get to use like what I know from counseling and also what I know from like study skills and like test taking strategies. And I kind of blended those together. So for those of you that are freshmen, if you signed up if you want to get like link loot for attending the workshops, you can do that. There's like a new protocol to set it up. You have to like go through the app, which you can get to through the UCF app. You have to download this thing called Goose Chase, sign in, username, and then you can get link loot that you can get prizes and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure that only applies to freshmen. So like I said, we are under the Student Academic Resource Center. So how many of you have ever like done anything at SARC before? Not a whole lot of you. Okay, and so none of you have been to SI or tutoring, anything like that? Okay, so we have a lot of different things. All of them are like academic support services. So the first is tutoring. So we have 3 tutoring labs on campus. One is in our SARC office in Howard Phillips Hall. We have another one in the Veterans Academic Resource Center that's over by the arena. And then the other is in the engineering building. It's like the CECS lab. And that's where we have our 3rd SARC tutoring lab. So all of our services are free, like it says at the bottom, but there are small group tutoring, so you can look up our schedule online and go to any of those. We have supplemental instruction, which is similar to tutoring, but you have the SI leader retakes the class again with you and meets like several times a week to kind of go over like what you learned in class and kind of supplement your learning and help you do well. We have these academic success workshops like the one you're at today. Learning skills consultations, so if you want more one-on-one attention on topics like time management, study skills, test-taking strategies, learning skills consultations, you would meet one-on-one with one of the graduate assistants in the office, so me or one of the others, to kind of figure out better ways to improve like what you're already doing or teach you some new strategies. Opal, we like do online, like kind of like live online tutoring for certain classes. And then ACE coaching, you meet one-on-one with another peer student that we've trained, and you can meet with them a couple times a semester to kind of hold you accountable for your, like I said, test-taking strategies, time management, things like that. So there are a variety of different services we offer. Okay. So what is anxiety? So I'm not an expert up here. A lot of you have your own ideas or things that are going to work and things that haven't worked to kind of reduce anxiety. So just first of all, like, what do you think anxiety is? Yeah. Yeah, you're getting stressed out and overwhelmed. What kind of things cause you to get stressed out? Tests. Okay, exams. Okay. It's mostly school stuff. What about not school stuff? Work. Yeah, work can be really overwhelming, trying to balance work schedule and school schedule and trying to find time to study. Yeah. Anything else? So you're telling me none of your family stress you out? Because my family stresses me out. So that causes anxiety sometimes. Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend, like any of those, like if you get in a fight with them, that might cause you a lot of anxiety. So there's a lot of different things that cause it. Sometimes you feel scared or afraid. Sometimes you feel worried. Sometimes you just, you don't know what's going to happen. Kind of like fear of the unknown. Or sometimes you feel so stressed and overwhelmed. It's like, I don't have time to do all these things. I can't balance it. So anxiety means different things to different people. So how do you know when you're feeling anxious? Yeah, your heart rate goes up. It might start to beat faster. What else? Yeah, clammy hands. Your hands might be really cold, but your hands might get sweaty, or your feet. Yeah? Oh, it was you, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I just get like really like antsy and like I
Yeah.
gotta get up and get moving.
Right, so like you can't sit still. You're kind of like a little shaky, a little agitated.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I get tired.
You get tired.
I want to just pass out.
Right. So sometimes when you get anxious, like there are so many things that need to get done, you're like, yeah, I'm just not going to do any of it. I'm just going to take a nap and, you know, kind of avoid all the things I have to do. Another thing, I usually say this in the beginning, but I forgot. I know a lot of you are probably here because you have to be. I get that. Like you have to get a paper signed or have to get someone like your professor or like an organization like makes you come to these. Like I get it. But I think you could get a lot of things out of it. And so like I want y'all to participate. Like you'll get more out of it if you talk and make it more conversational than me just sitting up here and like lecturing to you about like how to fix your anxiety. So thank you for those that are participating. So sometimes your muscles tense up. Like you might, like your shoulders might rise or you like clench your fists. Your muscles can ache. You might have like back problems. Okay, I don't know why these are out of order. Holding your breath or quickness of breath. So you might breathe really heavily or you might realize you haven't taken a breath in like a whole minute. So like I said, it affects different people differently. Hyperarousal or awareness. So you might be really like kind of paranoid or like really alert. You might be like looking around all the time or like unsure of what's going on. Racing thoughts. So that happens to me a lot. So I'll be thinking of one thing and then it just keeps happening like what if, and it just kind of spirals like that. Rapid heart rate, you had mentioned that. And sometimes nausea. So sometimes you might be so anxious that you get sick. Like some people, especially before they're about to take an exam, if they weren't prepared for the exam, they might feel like physically sick that, that this is about to happen. And then we mentioned like cold or sweaty palms as well. Okay, so there are different levels of anxiety. So some level of anxiety is normal and is needed. If we didn't have any anxiety at all, we wouldn't be motivated to get things done. We wouldn't have that kind of like stress as like a push to do something. So some level of stress is good. But other times it can be really overwhelming and can prevent you from doing even like daily things because you're so anxious. So I kind of broke those up, and actually the line works perfectly down the board. So like on the left would be like everyday like normal anxiety. So if you're worried about like a breakup, or if you're worried about like paying bills, like getting things done, that's a normal worry, like normal everyday anxiety. That can happen to anybody and it's okay. But if you have constant unwarranted worry that affects every day, so you're anxious for no reason, like you don't know why you're afraid, or you don't know why your heart's racing or your palms are clammy, that is not, it's not helpful, it's not normal. The next one on the left is feeling self-conscious in large groups. So everyone feels like that sometimes. Like you go in front of a bunch of people you don't know. Doing these workshops, I used to really hate them. A whole lot. Now I've gotten better. I don't hate them as much, but it still makes me kind of nervous sometimes. So that is normal. Getting up and doing like group presentations or even individual presentations in class or in like communication, you have to get up and give a speech. Like that's normal. It gets people a little uneasy. But if you start avoiding situations because of fear, like you won't leave the house because you're afraid of like going out with groups of people, or if you just don't do the assignment altogether because you cannot get up in front of the group, then that would be more of an anxiety disorder. And then back to the other side, so nervousness before an exam or presentation. So especially if there's like a large percentage on the line, like you know you have to do well on this exam, there's a lot more anxiety involved. Like you feel nervous, and that's normal. But if you have like a panic attack at the thought of just taking an exam, you can't concentrate, you can't focus, like you actually did prepare, but you just blank when you see the exam because you have anxiety. So then it might be something more serious. So like I mentioned before, like some anxiety is necessary. So there's like a perfect balance between how well you do and how anxious you feel. So right in the middle, you need like a moderate level of anxiety to do well. Like I mentioned before, if you don't have enough anxiety, you might procrastinate more. You might start putting off assignments. You're like, oh, I have plenty of time next week, or I have plenty of time, later. I'll do it this weekend. But then this weekend comes around and something fun you want to do, so you push it again. So if you don't have enough anxiety, you might tend to procrastinate and not be motivated. But then again, if you have too much anxiety, you might sit down to do your work, but you keep overanalyzing and thinking about like, what if, like I have to do really well on this exam, or I'm going to fail and I'm not going to be at UCF anymore, and then the thoughts kind of spiral. Then that prevents you from focusing on what it is you need to do in the present and can lead to you not being successful. Okay, so if you think any of these apply to you, that you think that you have more than just regular, usual anxiety, don't be embarrassed. Like, it's common. Even if your friends don't talk about it, you probably have friends that experience anxiety, whether they just go to counseling for it or whether they take medication for it or both. Because clinical anxiety, it's a chemical imbalance. Like, you can't control that. There's nothing you did to cause it. It's just the chemicals in your brain are out of balance. So you need medicine to kind of balance that out. But sometimes you just need counseling. So maybe it's like a situational type anxiety that you just need to talk to someone, whether it's individual or group. You'd learn different coping skills, which I listed a couple different ones. Deep breathing, super easy. Then the muscle relaxation, guided imagery, like all of those are things that can help reduce anxiety. But then also maybe it's just coming up with a plan or preparing better that will help you. If you think it's more of the test anxiety, which is why we're here today, you might just need a better plan or prepare more for your exams or your papers, and maybe that would reduce the anxiety that you feel. Okay, so how does test-taking anxiety differ from the types of anxiety that I just described? So none of you experience test-taking anxiety?
I only say this. I don't know, it's just been, I do everything I can to prepare myself, and lately it's just been happening. But I don't know, that fear, that panic attack when I take the test, because it has a very crucial class this semester that's been kicking in, and it kind of cost me one exam. It wasn't as bad as I thought it could have been.
Right.
Because the teacher lowered down the standard for the class, but I don't know, it's just been kind of kicking in.
So like the pressure of the class, like I have to do well in these like core classes to like progress in my major. So that kind of prevents you from focusing when the test is in front of you. Okay, very good. Okay.
I feel like the anxiety differs, especially when you have to like work with other classes and have other things to do. A separate class, that's like still like a hard day before class. And then you have an exam tomorrow that you need to study for.
Right. So kind of like balancing all the different classes becomes overwhelming when you have like one you put all your time in and you kind of forget about like the next class because it might be like easier. Okay. Anybody else? So the difference is if you are only experiencing these like anxious symptoms when it comes to taking an exam or when it comes to studying, then it may just be test-taking anxiety. It probably is not like generalized anxiety. The same way as if your anxiety just happens when you're in like social situations, it may just be social anxiety instead of generalized anxiety. So there are like different types. So a lot of times test-taking anxiety comes from like a lack of preparation. So if you didn't prepare beforehand, you sit down to take the exam and then you realize like, oh, this is worth like 30% of my grade and I don't have any idea what this material means. I haven't even opened the textbook. So then you start getting anxious and the thoughts kind of start spiraling. So anxiety can be caused by or lead to, because it can be either or, like a lack of understanding. So maybe you tried to prepare, you were reading your textbook, and you get to the end of the page and you have no idea what you just read. I've had a lot of LSCs with students in philosophy. If any of you are in philosophy, have ever taken philosophy? No? It's a very difficult class because the reading material is difficult to understand. So even if you're doing all the readings, you might not even know what it's talking about. So you kind of have to figure out how to break down the material and understand before you can do well. So even if you're reading. So maybe it's a math class and you're going to class and you're taking notes and you're doing it in class and you think you get it, but then you go home and try to do some practice problems, you have no idea what's going on. You thought like, oh, I thought I had it. You didn't ask any questions. You go home, realize you don't. So if you don't understand the material, you can't study the material for the exam. Because at that point, you're just trying to memorize. Lack of preparation, like I mentioned. So if you don't have like set study time set aside to read the material, to review your notes, to make a study guide, to make a self-test, if you're not preparing to study the material, then you might not do as well, and that may cause you a lot of anxiety. You may feel right before the exam like I had all this time and I didn't do anything, and you start thinking about into the past or thinking about in the future and forget about the test that's right in front of you in the present. Procrastination. So I did a workshop last week on procrastination, I think, and it was really popular. Everyone started chiming in because everyone related to procrastination. Like, we're all college students, it happens. We wait till the last minute to do things because you either think like, I don't need a lot of time, it's an easy assignment, or you think, oh, it's really hard, I don't want to do that right now, and you push it. So all of the different kinds of things lead to procrastination, but doing so can cause things to pile up. You do it all the night before, you lose sleep. So we'll talk about procrastination in a little bit. Ineffective study skills. So some of you might be studying the same way that you've been studying for the past 5 years, and it hasn't been getting you the grades you want, but you haven't changed it up and you still aren't getting the grades you want. A lot of people, when they come from high school to college, they think that, oh, I don't have to read, I don't have to study, like my professor will tell me what I need to know for the exam. And after that first exam, they realize, no, that's not the case. I was supposed to do all this stuff on my own and kind of teach myself what the professor didn't teach me. So you might have ineffective study skills. Not being able to concentrate is a big one, especially going with anxiety. It can be hard to focus, especially with a lot of distractions. So that can come from like where you're studying, who you're studying with, what's around you. I know your phones are very tempted. Like, I touch mine all the time just to like unlock it, even though there are no notifications. I just do it anyway out of habit. That's a big distraction. It's hard to focus and concentrate when you have all these things around you. And like what you mentioned, the pressure of the grade percentage, that's a big deal, especially people who have like really high goals, like they want to be really successful. They want to get into grad school or law school or med school. They want to get a research position or an internship. And so they know there's a lot of pressure on these classes, and that can cause them anxiety and prevent them from doing well. Okay, so I found a couple quotes that I thought were really applicable. So, as your knowledge and understanding of any subject increase, the test anxiety should decrease. So if you are preparing enough and you feel like you have a good understanding of the material, you've talked to your professor, you've talked to your peers, you've got a good understanding, and you still get to the exam and it causes you anxiety, then it might be something a little more. You may need to go talk to someone at CAPS or someone at UCF Cares to kind of see what you can do to kind of balance that out. Another one said, one important key to success is self-confidence. An important key to self-confidence is preparation. So the better we feel going into an exam, usually the better we're going to do. If you go into it thinking, you know, I studied, I'm going to do well, like I know this, a lot of times you come out, you're like, okay, I don't have the grade, but I know I did well. Like, those answers came easy to me. Whereas if you go into an exam and you're like, you know, I don't really know this material, like I didn't study enough, you know, what if I fail? And you're thinking all these negative thoughts, you might start second guessing yourself. So you initially write A and then you go down a few problems and you're like, wait a minute, but maybe that was C. And then you go back and you change it. And then it's like that for every one. You go back and forth, and before you know it, you have 10 minutes left and you have like half the test done. So the more confident you are going in, the more likely you are to do well. Okay, so I mentioned studying for understanding. So the first thing you need to do to study for understanding is go to class. That's a big thing. A lot of students, especially in these large lecture halls, are like, I don't need to be there. They're not going to know I'm there. I'm still going to get the points, like, or they don't count for attendance. And that's great. Like, if your professor didn't count for attendance, that's awesome. However, if you're not there, you can't learn the material. I highly doubt when you skip class, you're going to text someone in the class and be like, hey, what are the notes for the class today? Like, what did I miss? It's not like it was in high school. You don't have to, like, make up material from class, so it's really different. Another one is reading the textbook. So how many of you read every chapter that's assigned for your textbooks? 1, 2, okay. Not a whole lot in this whole room. How many of you think you read maybe like half the chapters assigned? Half, okay. So half is better than none. So the thing is, a lot of people skim the textbooks for answers. So whether it's for like questions on like quizzes or like homeworks, I know you take those online quizzes, you have your textbook, you flip through to find the answer. That's great. You might get a 10 on the quiz, but are you really learning the material? No. Do you really understand like what's going on in the exam? No. The other part is taking notes from your textbook. So yeah, you might be reading the chapter, but are you taking notes from it? A lot of times if you read, maybe you've read like 1 or 2 pages, and then you think to yourself, you know, I don't even know what I just read. I have no idea what's going on. And then you get discouraged, and then you probably get on your phone or shut the book, and you know, that's bad. I don't want to read anymore. It's common. I see a lot of smiles and head nods. It's probably pretty common. So the thing about taking notes, if you read, you know, a paragraph, you have to kind of figure out what works for you. So maybe you read a paragraph at a time, or maybe you read a page at a time, and then take some notes. So what stuck out to you? What do you think were the key points? Highlighting is great, like underlining and highlighting is good, but when you rewrite things, it tends to like stick more because you're writing, you're seeing it again. So that can be really helpful to kind of write down the key points, and then that way after you're done with the textbook, you can just read over the chapter notes instead of rereading the chapter again. So people think like, oh, that takes up a lot of time to take the notes. Well, it doesn't take up any more time than reading the chapter again. And you might not have to cram as much if you actually understood the material the first time. So I really like memes. I found a lot last week for the procrastination ones, but I added some in here. So I'm very busy doing the things I don't need to do in order to avoid doing things I'm actually supposed to be doing. That happens to me a lot when I have like too much time during the day, too much free time. I'm like, oh, I can do this, and then I can do this and do this, and then you realize, oh, it's 8 o'clock and I haven't done anything for school. So that is very common. Also, meeting with your professors to clarify information. Have any of you ever been to your professor's office hours? Okay, again, a couple. A lot of students I meet with tell me they're like intimidated by the professor, or they don't like the professor, they don't want to talk to them. So what are some reasons for you that you either have or have not like been to your office hours? Your professor. Yeah. Recommendation letters, okay. Had you like talked to them beforehand?
Yeah, but like getting to know them like on a personal level, because then we'll only write what they do.
Right, that's a good point. Okay, I see what you mean. So yeah, if you get to know your professors and they know you're dedicated and you're like passionate about the material, they'll be more likely to write you a rec letter. Whereas if they've never even seen you before, don't even know your name and to your face, not probably a great reference for a recommendation letter. Very good. Anybody else? Okay, so maybe you didn't quite understand something, or you thought you did, you just wanted to kind of reassure that you knew what was going on. That's good, because the thing about the professors, they're the ones that like teach you the material, first of all, so they know it best. They also are the ones that make the exams, so they know what's going to be on there. So they know what you need to know, what you don't need to know, things like that. So it can be really helpful to kind of get their input when you're unsure. The thing about going to your professors, it's good to come prepared. So if you're going to your professor and you're just saying, you know, what's going to be on the exam? Probably not going to be a very helpful session. They're not going to tell you what material is going to be on the exam. They're not there to kind of spoon feed you. But if you go into the workshop or go into the office hour and you're like, hey, like I was doing my homework last night and I really didn't understand questions like 7 and 8. Can you explain that to me? I don't really get it. So that would be more, they'd be more likely to help you. Also telling them what you understand and what you don't. So say, you know, I understand this really well, like I get this concept, but this other one, I don't really get that. So telling them you are paying attention, you are trying, kind of reassuring them of that. What is studying? So studying can take place weeks before the exam, not just the day before. So a lot of people think like studying is cramming, and that's all that it is. So what are some things that studying encompasses.
I like reading the chapter before
Mm-hmm.
lecture, so when the teacher talks about the lecture, you already kind of know what he's going to say, and then if you have questions, you already know what you want to ask.
Yes,
You don't remember it.
exactly. That's a very good point. Reading your textbook beforehand, so you kind of already have a familiarity with the material. Yeah.
Flashcards.
Yeah, making flashcards. Yeah, that can be good, especially if you're on the go a lot. Like, you can read them on the bus. You can read them while you're walking to class. Also, Patricia, I just realized I did not print the evals, by the way. So flashcards are good. A lot of people just think that flashcards, you can only write definitions on them. You can use flashcards for a lot of things. You can use them for, like in chemistry, you can write like the chemical reactions on one side, like the chemical sequences, and then like what they are on the other side. You can use like diagrams or like models, like all kinds of different things. Difference in gathering information and learning the material. So there's a video that we have on the SARC website, and there's a handout I can show you. It's called the 5 different types of studying. And the first type is just gathering the information. So going to lecture, you're just gathering information. Reading the textbook like the first time, that's just you're gathering information. You're not really learning anything. But then the second time you kind of read through it. So if you're like answering homework problems or making connections, like she said, between the textbook and the lecture notes, then you're kind of learning it. You're drawing those connections. You're like adding your own like insight to it. Putting things in your own words shows that you're learning things. So you have to differentiate between the two. They're just examples of like all different types of things that studying includes. So reading, taking notes, rereading your notes, or rewriting. So some people might write really sloppy in lecture because they're trying to get everything down, but then they might go back after and kind of make it into an outline or like color code their notes or things like that. Mnemonics. Do anyone know what mnemonics are? What are they?
Isn't it kind of like making like so you're like helping them to remember a list of things
Mhm.
and kind of take the first letter of each and kind of make
Right.
something to remember it?
Yeah, so an acronym is one type of mnemonic, but that's right. They're memory tools. So like the ABC song is a mnemonic. So it's like putting information you need to know to a song. There's a song about the 50 states. So the thing about music, that's the first mnemonic on the list, is if you hear a song that came on that you used to listen to maybe 5 years ago, and you heard it today on the radio, you'd probably know all the words still, because music just sticks in our heads. So if you put the material you're trying to learn to music, you can sing the song in your head in the exam. Also, acronyms are really great, like Roy G. Biv, like the colors of the spectrum. It's easy to remember, so you got to come up with little clever things. So there are handouts on those. Mind maps, so those are the things where you put like a word in the center and then you like draw connections out from it. So it's connecting like different parts of information back to like main ideas. Outlines, study guides, practice problems, all of those are studying. So I liked these because if you're not going to study now, then when? So I don't know if you can read the one on the left in the back, but it says tomorrow. A noun that's a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation, and achievement is stored. So every day, I don't want to do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. Then the next day gets there and stuff comes up, and then I'll do it tomorrow. But when is tomorrow? Like, when are you actually going to sit down and do it? And then tomorrow, the best time to do everything you had planned for today. It always sounds better. Okay, so what are some reasons for procrastination? Reasons you put it off to the last minute? You're always tired. Yes, you're doing so much. I've been at school all day. I've been at work. Like, I had to go to practice or I had to go to a meeting. You get home and the last thing you want to do is open a textbook or open your notes. Yeah? What else?
Phone.
Your phone? Yeah? So many things to do on your phone. You never run out of things to do.
And like friends hitting you up.
Yeah.
Friends can do that.
Right, which is fun. Like, you want to have a social life, like you want to hang out with your friends, but then like, man, I should really work on this paper. It's due like in 2 days, and I was supposed to do it last week. It's really easy to kind of do that as well.
My room's not clean enough.
Okay, yes. I don't know if I might put it in here, but I think it was on the procrastination one. But I had one that was like, my favorite time to clean is when I have so many things to do. You're like, oh, you know, I've been meaning to clean. I'll do that first. Like, I'll get to the school later. So yeah, you want to be organized. You want to get things together. Like, I'll be organized so that I can study and focus. You kind of talk yourself into it. So like one thing I mentioned earlier, you have so much to do that you just do nothing instead. You get so overwhelmed. You like look at your to-do list. Maybe you like had a plan. Then you're like, oh man, like I don't want to do that today. Like today's my off day. I don't have to work today. I could do all these other things. Lack of motivation. So this is a big one, especially if you don't know what your major is or you don't know what you're working towards. So a lot of people come into college, they're undecided, which is fine, but it can make it harder to kind of get through those gen ed courses because you don't know what you're working towards. You're not working towards a goal. So you can think to yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this even important? I'm not even interested in this. Or if your parents kind of convinced you to go to college, but you weren't really into it, that can come up a lot too. Disorganization, like you said. So you might get frustrated because you can't find your materials. You're like, I know I took notes from this lecture and I can't find them, so I can't study. Like, I just can't do anything because I can't find my stuff. Or if you get to campus, you're ready to study, you brought your laptop, and you left your charger at home. But, well, there goes that. I'm not going to study today. I'm just going to move on. Perfectionism. So if you know that you don't have time to make it perfect, you just don't do it. Or you're like, you know, I'm not going to get an A on it, so I'm not even going to try. I'll just turn this in. How do you convince yourself that procrastinating is beneficial? Mm-hmm.
Tell myself it's better to be well rested.
Yes.
Have good grades.
Yep, it's better to be well rested so then I can focus tomorrow. What else? Think about when you're on the couch and it comes up, Netflix, next episode. How do you decide, you know what, I'm going to watch the next one. I don't need to do my schoolwork yet. I'm not afraid to call on people. Think about it. You all procrastinate. We're all students. I know it happens.
I don't know, sometimes I convince myself like the exams for business classes, you can just schedule a time to go take them. So I'll take it like the last day right before it's due, and I'm like, it gives me more time to study, but then I don't actually use that time to study.
Right. So you kind of give yourself the extra time, but you realize you're not using your time effectively. That's a really big one. A lot of times, especially for the weekends, you're like, oh, it's not due till Monday, and I have all day Saturday and Sunday to do it. But then you don't do it Saturday and Sunday either, and then Monday comes around, and you're like, wow, here we are again. Okay.
It's like very similar to that. It's like you have your whole big picture, the whole set date, how the day's gonna go, and it's like, hey, you want to go out for like an hour or two, you go out, and then you come home like 4 hours later, and you're like, damn, I didn't get nothing.
Right. Nothing all day. I had all this time and I was going to be productive. I had a plan, but then you got distracted or all these other things came first. Very true. A lot of people say it's for my wellness, like you mentioned, like sleep. Like I need to be well rested. I work hard. I deserve a break. You had mentioned that earlier. Like I'm tired. Like I've done all this stuff today. I don't want to do any more work. The work is easy, so it can wait. Or it's too hard to concentrate right now. So maybe your roommate's home and you can't focus, or you chose to come study in the union and it's around lunchtime. So there are people everywhere and it's really loud. So you're like, you know, it wouldn't be helpful anyway. So then you have to ask yourself, is procrastinating really benefiting me? Like, is this helping me to prepare for my exams? Is it helping me feel like less anxious? So I like the first one. It says, I'm not a procrastinator. I just prefer doing all my work in a deadline-induced panic. Happens a lot for those like 11:59 deadlines. You're like racing the clock to get your stuff done. It can definitely feel like a panic. And then the other one, procrastination is like a credit card. It's a lot of fun until you get the bill. So you get those grades back and you're like, yeah, I got a D and I guess it's passing, but like I could have done better. So combating anxiety requires a lot of different things. So it requires motivation. You have to want to do better. Requires time management. You have to have time to study. Studying and time management kind of go together. And self-discipline. Like you have to be able to turn your phone off or say no to your friends to put yourself and your needs first. So for motivation, the best way to get something done is just to begin. For breaking down assignments, so what happens when you see study written down in your phone or planner? So given that you do write it down, like, oh, I'm going to study tomorrow, but then you see that written down and you're like, well, I don't know what class I'm going to study for. I don't know what I'm supposed to be reading. I don't even know what's due next. So then you're like, nah, I don't need to study right now. I don't have anything due this week. So instead, one thing that can help you is to writing down more specific things in your planner or your calendar, whatever it is you write in. So you could write, read chapter 3 and answer the study guide questions from 4 to 6. Or rewrite or combine the lecture and textbook notes for the week of 10-2 to 10-7 from 2 to 4. So that way, when you get to that in your planner or in your calendar, you see, okay, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and how long I'm going to be doing it, so that can help hold you more accountable and you'll know if you achieved it or not. The next one talks about self-defeating behaviors in college. There's a handout on our website about these, but there are different ones, so you might not have a fixed schedule for studying each day, and that can be a disadvantage because you think you have free time and you can study whenever. Not reading the textbooks, that's not good because a lot of the information from professors' exams come from textbooks and they expect you to read them. Also, procrastinating is self-defeating because you don't have as much time to spend on it and do a better job. Self-sabotage. So we're our own worst enemy sometimes. Like, you can blame your friends to an extent, or you can blame your roommate and your parents, but have you done anything to change it, to like change the environment? Probably not. Like, maybe you have. So you've got to figure out like what it is you can do to get yourself in a better situation. So I like this one because life is overwhelming. Like, it's hard to juggle class and work and friends and relationships and going out, hobbies, extracurricular. The middle says, attempt to do everything until stress takes over. Things start slipping. You end up crying in your bed, deciding to do none of it and just watch TV to escape to somewhere else. So it happens. Like, you think you've got all this going on, so you just avoid it. But there is time. So my supervisor kind of broke down like the hours in a week. And she broke it up to, so say you're in this many hours in class, assuming that you sleep 8 hours per night, which I know most of us do not, and you spend 3 hours a day eating, so 1 hour for each meal. If you subtract all those, that still leaves you with 79 hours. So if you're working for 20 hours and you're in school or socializing and relaxing for 25, that still leaves 34 hours for studying. So I know it is very unrealistic that you will study for 30 hours a week. But the point of it is just to kind of put things in perspective for you. Because a lot of times students come in and they're like, I don't have time to study. I don't have time to read my textbook. I don't have time to do this. A lot of the students that are telling me these things don't even work. And I know a lot of people do. Some people may work 40 hours a week and go to school. So you have to adjust this for yourself. But I challenge you to go home and figure out, like, okay, how many hours am I in class? How many hours am I doing all of this stuff a week? And see how much time, free time, you really have. And then the next one goes into kind of like a schedule. Well, the next talks about time management principles. So time management is kind of like the foundation for being successful, whether it's reducing your anxiety, improving your study skills, like doing better in your classes. If you don't have a good time management strategy, it's hard to do all those other things because there's no time to fit it all in. So assess the current use of your time. Like what I mentioned, go home and figure out how much time you're spending doing each of these things. Creating a routine or schedule, which I'll show you an example on the next page. And this may change weekly. That's fine. It's adaptable. It's not like a set schedule you have to follow. Track assignments and deadlines. So figure out, what do you have due next week? What do you have due next month? Like, stay on top of that. Breaking down the assignments in small tasks. So we talked about that like a couple slides ago. Planning ahead. So don't just wait till the night before to start preparing for the exams. Like, think about in advance like what it is you need to do to be prepared for these classes. Using reminders. So I have an iPhone and there's a reminders app that comes on the phone. It's really great. I use it all the time. And I'm sure Android has a similar app. But you can set reminders like to study, to do this, to do that, and to kind of keep you in check. And then reassessing the use of your time. So see if you are still using the same amount of time. Let's skip that one. So this is the schedule. So that looks a little overwhelming at first, but the red is just your classes, so you put those in first. You put in like your definites first. So you definitely have class at the same time every week. Maybe your work schedule would come next. And then you would put in like whether you have like a sorority or fraternity meeting, maybe you really like the football games. You put the things in that you want to go to and then figure out what are the blanks. So whether it's you got to make time to work out, then maybe you want to go to like the math lab at this time, or you have tutoring at this time. So put in the set times, and then you put in other times to study. And some of them are kind of specific, so like study chapter 12 for math on Wednesday. So you just kind of put in what it is that you need to do. But just writing this all out can be really helpful to give you, especially if you're a visual learner, to give you like a visual look of like what you need to be doing. So successful time management, knowing what your goals are, like we talked about earlier, like what you're working towards. Determining your priorities within these goals. So like what do you have to go to and what are things you kind of just like want to go to. Anticipate future needs and changes. So stuff is going to come up. That's normal. And then carrying out the plan that you make. So if you set a study plan for yourself, but then you don't ever follow it, that's not helpful. So you've got to start somewhere. Okay, so concentrations. This is another thing that influences anxiety a lot is concentration. The definition that I saw that I thought was really interesting is the ability to direct one's thinking in whatever direction that one would intend. So if you are able to concentrate when you sit down to study, it's easy for you to focus on what's in front of you. For a lot of people, that's not the case though. They sit down to study and they're trying to look at this and their mind is racing to a lot of different things. So it talks about some external causes for this. So environmental distractions, whether it's TV, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube videos, your roommates, your parents, your friends, maybe it's just comfy furniture, like you get really cozy like laying on the couch, you don't want to get up. Snacks, so you sit down and study and then you're like, oh, I'm hungry, like I want to go get a snack. Like all of those things are things that cause you to not be able to concentrate. Also noise, so sometimes maybe you're listening to music to kind of drown out the noise around you, but then you really like that song. So you start singing the song and not focusing on what you're reading. So internal causes. So maybe you're hungry. Maybe you're really tired. You're trying to read and you keep like falling into your textbook. You can't focus if you're doing that. Maybe you're bored. So that kind of goes back to the goals. So maybe you're like a biology major and you have like an English class. You're like, I don't need to know this. I don't like writing. I don't like reading. So you're not as motivated to do your English stuff because you get bored. You like really sciencey things. You like challenging things. So you get bored. You might get anxious. So you might start, because concentration can cause anxiety, or anxiety can cause like concentration problems. It can go either way. So you might get anxious, like, oh, I have to do really well on this. And you start thinking forward to like the what ifs again. Also daydreaming, that happens to me a lot. I start thinking about like all these other things that I need to do. So I don't know if it's on this one or not, the next one, but I created like a worry sheet. So while I'm reading or doing homework or whatever, if something pops up in my head that's like unrelated, I like write it down on a piece of paper. So that way I don't forget about it, but it's not distracting me anymore either. So kind of separate it. And then personal worries. So maybe someone in your family is really sick, or you think your boyfriend or girlfriend is cheating on you, and that is like all you can think about when you really should be focusing on your history homework. So figuring out ways to kind of separate the two can cause you, or can help your concentration. This is one like avoiding distractions. Different things distract different people. Now we have a lot of theme parks here, and food and social media, TV, all of those things. So it has some of the things on here. So intending to study for a set amount of time, having your materials ready, like being organized with like your books and notes and stuff. Studying in a quiet place. So how many of you study in your rooms? Okay, several of you. Do you study in your bed in your room? I see a lot of guilty people. When you're studying in your bed, it can be really hard to concentrate, especially if you're tired. If you're like, oh, I'm already in bed, like I'll just take a nap with your textbook like right beside you. I'll absorb the information. It doesn't work like that. It can be hard to focus in your bed because it's associated with sleep. That's where your body goes to kind of like unwind. But it gets confused because you're trying to unwind, but you're also trying to focus. So it can be best to get out of your bed, even if it's just at the desk in your room. If it's the kitchen table, like in the common room, go to like a quiet study area on campus. You gotta find something that works for you. But studying in the same place often can be helpful because then your mind starts to associate that place with studying. Varying your study activities, so we talked about earlier, whether it's taking notes, coming up with mnemonics, drawing mind maps, all those different things. Taking breaks. So if you know that you're not someone that can study for 3 hours straight without a break, then don't write down that you're going to study from 1 to 4 with no break. That's not realistic. Maybe it's study for an hour and then you take a 10-minute break. But you have to have the self-discipline to then go back to studying after that 10-minute break. I know it can be really easy to get sucked in to all of the distractions, but you've got to like set those boundaries for yourself. And then I already mentioned the worry sheet. Okay, so what if you feel that like you did prepare, you did all the studying, you have a time management strategy, but you still feel anxious before the exam? So then what? So try to think positively. So come up with like a mantra, which is like a supportive quote that you tell yourself. It's going to be different for each person. Whatever it is you know that you need to kind of motivate you. Maybe it's something that's related to your goal. Maybe it's something just related to positivity. Figure out what that is and kind of repeat that to yourself. Listening to relaxing music. So that's going to be different for other people. Some people might like classical, really slow music. Some people might like to listen to EDM on their way to class. Whatever it is to kind of get you in like that positive, like confident mindset can be helpful. Posting motivational quotes as like your phone background or like sticky notes in your notebook can be helpful. Just as like little like reminders. You can like make your own, like have your friends like make some for you, like whatever. Just little positive things to kind of get you in like a better like headspace. And arriving to your exam or your class early. So if you oversleep and you're like rushing to class anyway, you're already going to be out of breath. You're already going to be feeling anxious about getting to the exam on time. It's going to be hard to feel like confident in all of your like studying the night before. So try to get there early and like calmly, and making sure you have all your materials. So if you show up to class without a pencil or a pen, or you show up without the Scantron, then you're frazzled. So making sure that you have all of your materials. And then just some tips for the exam day. So going with your first instinct. So a lot of times people start to second guess yourself. Try not to do that. Unless you are confident, maybe like another question like helped you answer that question, or it all of a sudden just came back to you. Unless you are confident that the next choice is the right one, then don't change it. Go with your first instinct. Answer questions worth the most amount of points first. So if one question is worth 30 points, but all the others are worth 2, I'd spend more time on the 30-point one. But then that goes to the next one. You can't spend all your time on the harder questions because then you might not finish the exam. So if you know that one, it's taken you over 5 minutes, you're still struggling, skip that and come back. So answer the ones you do know and then come back to the harder ones. That way you have time to finish. Try to stay focused. So if your mind starts to wander, you can do like a little worry sheet on a scrap sheet of paper, kind of refocus your mind, do some deep breathing. Deep breathing kind of regulates the oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body and kind of slows down your body's response. So that can be helpful. And taking your time. So if you have 3 hours or like 2 hours to take the exam, don't think that you have to hurry up and get finished just because people are already finishing and turning their paper in. Look up, if you still have time, relax. You don't have to be, like the first one done is not necessarily going to get the best grade. They could go through just Christmas tree, choosing random answers and turn it in. They don't even care. And you think, oh my gosh, they're already done. I have to get finished. And then that can cause you to mess up too. So slow down, take your time. And then developing a UCF support team can help with anxiety. Because if you know who is on campus and who can help you with different things, that can make you feel more at peace. So at SARC, I'll show you our SARC online. We have a lot of great worksheets and handouts that you can view like anytime. Come to these workshops. You can do one of the one-on-one sessions. Talking to your professors, your academic advisor, financial assistants, career services. Career services has a lot of great resources on their website now. If you're looking for a job or you're looking to get your resume critiqued or look for internships or research. The Counseling Center, CAPS, so they have individual and group sessions, but they also have workshops if you just want to get some information about that. They have a therapy dog too, which is really cool. UCF Cares, so that one a lot of people don't know about. It's like an umbrella of like resources. So if you kind of don't know where to go or who to turn to for help, UCF Cares is a really good one to go to. And then your friends and family, like they are there to support you. So talk to them. This one, it's not a video or anything. I just want to show you our website. So if you go to SARC's website or Google SARC online, you'll see this. If you go to Learning Skills and Resources. So it breaks it down in different like topics. So maybe you want to learn more about time management. So all of these are different like worksheets and handouts like on time management. Some of them are about procrastinating. Some of them are about building a schedule. Some of them are, the 3-list method is about like goals. Maybe it's test prep. The handouts I gave you, one of them is like a study plan. So it's like what should you do like right after an exam? What should you do leading up to an exam? But it's really great, gives you a lot of ideas of like different ways to study. The other one talks about how to effectively like study notes for an exam. So it's a lot of different steps and incorporates a lot of good ideas. And on the back of one of them is like a test prep checklist. So have you done these things in preparation for an exam? So look at all of those. If you want more information about like the handouts it reference, like I said, there's a lot of things on here. There's videos as well. If you prefer videos. So like I said, my name's Alex. If any of you have like papers you want me to sign, like my information's here, so please like go ahead and fill it out. So all I have to do is sign it.